Hi fellow collectors and YouTubers, and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I want to deeply thank each one of you for the support. It's much appreciated, really. I'm finally ready to share my second review. This one is shorter than the previous one, I promise. This time on the Hyperreal Statue Collectors channel, we're going to take a look at a life-size prop replica. This is the second in order of release of a series of 3 items that belong to the same Batman line. I review each one of them on the channel, starting from this one. Today we're going to check out together this life-size replica of the Catwoman's mask by Pure Arts, another great statue company. This item has been faithfully reproduced from the original prop used in the Batman Returns movie from 1992, directed by the mighty Tim Burton. This is undoubtedly my favorite chapter of the 90s saga, started with the '89 Batman, which is useless to say that it has become a real legend. There's a huge nostalgia factor related to this movie, that despite its darker tones is capable of evoking many warm, sweet memories of my childhood. Moreover, I can say that this mask belongs to which I consider as my favorite movie iteration of Catwoman. Michelle Pfeiffer's interpretation and beauty, together with the unique atmosphere of this timeless movie and the gorgeous, iconic look of her suit, bring this character on top of my personal ranking, despite the more cartoonish tone the movie has, compared to Nolan's and Reeves' takes. But let's stop rambling. It's time to see how Pure Arts' job turned out, and answer the main question you might ask about this item. Is it worth the money? Let's see together. Just a quick reminder, if you can, I highly recommend watching the video in 4K. This is the exclusive edition, available only through the manufacturer's website. It comes with this bonus item that is actually an awesome little addition. It also includes a metal plate with a small acrylic stand. It shows the edition size and the specific number of the item, of course. Here's a quick look at the assembly sheet, where you can see all the elements it includes. One thing I love about their policy is that they usually offer an exclusive limited version, which includes a nice bonus kinda proximity piece at the same price of the regular version. It's a very neat incentive that you can take advantage of until it goes sold out. It's still available at the moment. Its ES is of 150 units worldwide, very limited, whereas the regular version has a larger 999 ES. The whole thing weighs actually about 5 kilograms, and it feels pretty solid and durable. Let's check first this bonus cat clock that is a beautiful addition, other than a little nice storytelling element to enrich the display effect. It looks just a bit different from the giant one used for the movie that actually had a glossy glaze and looked completely smooth. This one's nicely textured on the back part instead. That adds more realism and interest as well, avoiding making it look just a plasticky and cheap accessory. So definitely a smart little improvement. The clock hands that are just little black painted metal bars tend to lose paint if you touch them, at least on my sample. Not a big deal, it's more of a little forgivable QC issue. It might be obvious, but in case you're wondering, it's not a working clock, it's a polystone mini replica, very nicely done. The piece itself is overall a high quality replica with a linear but captivating design and a quite incisive look. It's halfway between a museum type piece and a conceptual piece composed of a few elements for an easy, quick and pain-free assembling. Let's start by taking a look at the base that includes the bat symbol, literally sculpted in this rocky-like stand, whose upper part consists of a serial statue from the '89 movie scenography, on which the mask is placed on. The base is well painted, and it's quite heavy for what it is. That makes it a secure stand for the proper replica that is just leaning on top of it. The iconic logo comes from the first movie as well. It was quickly shown at the opening. It has been brilliantly reproduced in this three-dimensional version, exactly with the same rocky materiality of the original 2D one. In terms of execution, I'm really pleased with the rocky look they recreated on the base. It's well done and it looks almost faithful to prototype quality. It's overall well textured and weathered. You can see some marks and scratches here and there, wisely spread on it. On its backside there's a sort of plaque with a rusty effect, truly nicely painted. It adds a little color to an otherwise almost entirely black and white piece. It has a small footprint that makes it one of the most compact life-size collectibles in its category I've ever owned, and the smaller one of the Trinity. On the sideways, there are two identical elements, one on each side, which looks like drainage channel filters, well textured and nicely painted, with a kinda metallic finish. They initially made me think of a sewage-related thing, but they actually should be like ventilation channels. They were visible in the first movie, during the Joker's incursion at the museum. This admixture of elements totally gives you Burton's movie vibes, straightened even farther by the proximity item the piece comes with. However, I think they could have used something specifically taken from the '92 movie scenography for this base. It would have been more suitable concept-wise. Anyway, the serial statue works so well aesthetically that I can understand their choice. At the end of the day, I really like the way it looks. I do think they've also done a great job with this base in terms of execution, despite a very few negligible imperfections in paint application. In normal light conditions, you can partially see the head of the statue through the big eyeholes of the mask, whereas the metal rod that makes it stand on top of the statue is completely hidden when you're straight in front of it, and nearly invisible from the other angles. In fact, it gets almost lost in the black of the interior part of the mask, as you'd want it to be. The same base has been used for the other two products of this line, but depending on the item on top of it, it has a quite different visual effect. Here, it remains almost entirely visible, and it works at the same time as a sober stand that doesn't steal much attention from the holy relic it holds up. The second element it includes is the most representative accessory of the character, her leather whip. It doesn't look exactly mind-blowing as a proper replica, especially if separated from its original context, but it's neither cheaply done anyway. Here's a front and back look. The first impression right out of the box indeed could be not totally pleasing. It might look deformed and also too short compared to how the original movie prop looked like. Not an impeccable result if you consider it as a replica maybe. It works greatly as an evocative companion element though. They already modeled it to give it the correct shape for an easy installation and a rip-roaring visual effect once in place. I do think it works best if wrapped around the body of the statue, since its shape looks almost permanently conditioned, and that's the main reason why I wouldn't recommend displaying it differently. But that's just my preference. Its glossy effect is about the same as the mask. It's very hard to tell how accurate it is, based just on what is barely shown in the movie. I can only say that on the screen it looked way longer and not that glossy. Its handle looked bigger too. It has been adapted for the purpose. The original whip felt also more leatherish. I would say that it wasn't made out of the same material of the suit, but I'm not able to tell for sure. What's certain is that it successfully reproduces the waving proper of the original item, and it definitely has an overall fairly realistic and pleasing look. Last but not least, it excellently does what it's meant to do, and that's what really matters at the end of the day. Alright, we'll finally come to the focal point of the review, that is to say, the mask itself. It looks overall incredible, and I think it's quite realistic and almost screen accurate. Nonetheless, there's something that needs to be pointed out, and we'll soon get there. Physical-wise, the mask isn't made out of polyson, but of a softer material, an exclusive poly-based casting material, according to their website. It truly feels like genuine latex, and it has exactly the same visual effect of the original prop, but differently from real latex, it shouldn't easily deteriorate, as they also claim. Additionally, it looks strong enough to keep its shape intact in the long run, so I definitely wouldn't be concerned about its durability, even if only time can really tell. It's not meant to be worn, of course, so I do not recommend trying. Shape aside, it's mainly all about the amazing contrast between the glossy black, which covers about the 90% of its surface, and the white thread that immediately stands out to the eye. White stitchings are amazingly defined sculpt-wise, despite some little imperfections, and they work pretty fine, even if they don't really pass through the holes, of course, but that should be also screen accurate, as far as I can tell. What I recently noticed after watching Tim Burton's masterpiece again in 4K, something that I do recommend to all the hardcore fans, is that differently from this replica, the original mask had many little tears, as if it was actually composed of different pieces, barely kept together by the white thread. This replica looks almost perfectly sutured instead. There's no real separation between the pieces the threading keeps together, at least not in the main side of the mask, and not as much as you could see in the iconic bird-eating scene, from which I suppose this replica is inspired by. I know, I'm beyond fussy, and to be fair, these minor details are only noticeable in the 4K version of the movie. With that being said, it might penalize a bit its overall accuracy, unless we assume it should be just considered as a more generic replica. Anyway, this is more of a side note than anything else. There are a few mold-related imperfections in certain points. My guess is that it could just be due to the nature of the casting material that doesn't allow an absolute cleanliness sculpt-wise, but I still think it's pretty well done anyway. After all, it's not something that's meant to be observed through a magnification lens, but as you know, I'm quite picky, and I think it's something that should be at least mentioned. Unfortunately, there's something else that I'm not usually in love with: the paint job on the white threads. It looks a bit rough, to be honest, and some details look almost poorly done. A further effort in this case during the production phase would have been really appreciated, and maybe equally required. Have I been just a tad hapless with my sample? It could be, but to me this is definitely the major downfall of the piece. Anyway, in a normal display condition it looked good, but as you get closer you might notice the trick. It's not just imprecise, it makes the threading look bidimensional in certain areas, since the white paint covers only the upper part of the wire. I think a better outcome would have been easily obtainable. After all, realism goes hand in hand with attention to detail, and even if you normally won't get that close, it might be disappointing. On the contrary, the latex effect is incredibly well reproduced and totally on point. That's actually the main star of the show. They've done a wonderful job in this case, since it looks scary realistic. It isn't just smooth, it actually has a very light texture all over its surface, some marks here and there, that makes it also look fairly worn out, and a good amount of details, enough to successfully simulate the original prop look. The backside of the mask in particular is freaking cool. Detail-wise, to me, is the most interesting part of this replica, due to the intricacy of the threadings. You can also see some wrinkles on the flaps of tissue that are well done, and I love the fact that the areas near the threading look just like stretched fabric. This feature is even stronger and so easily appreciable on that side of the mask. These angle pictures bring out all its charm as well, maybe even more than a frontal picture or a side profile one could do. The original design, that to me is still unbeaten when it comes to charm, has been masterfully recreated. Even if I would have preferred a further damaged version, I have to say that they've done an overall fantastic job. Near this awesome little gash in the back, and near the one on the right aisle, you can also see some grooves that I haven't been able to clearly identify in any specific movie scene. I might be wrong, but instead of being pierced, the mask just looked deteriorated to me in those specific areas during the movie. I just don't like the way these details turned out, regardless. I mean, if these were meant to be holes, I'd have expected them not to be blind holes. They're just engraved, but not really drilled, as you already saw. I think the prototype was exactly like this. I'm not indeed complaining about a quality inconsistency matter, nor about accuracy. I'm just saying that the final outcome may not be something entirely compatible with the definition of hyperreal. Alright, after all these considerations, it's finally time for the detail rating. Let's quickly talk about numbers. Intricacy-wise, I would have expected something more gashes, and consequently a stronger semblance of separation between the pieces the iconic threading keeps together. I'd also just have preferred a more intricate and realistic approach when it comes to the take on the holes we saw a few moments ago. For this point, I also consider the tiny mold-related imperfections. Aside from this, they've done an overall great job. Paint application is overall good too, but it looks facile when you analyze the fine detail of the white threading that is definitely a crucial point of this replica, and this is reflected upon my rating. Mixed media. In this specific case is referred to the mask and the whip. They both look made out of the same quality materials, but the mask is overall better done, other than more screen accurate material-wise. Base. Good concept and excellent execution. The rocky effect they recreated through the paint application is just phenomenal, and the rusty metallic one is awesome too. It's just a shame that this pedestal is inspired by the scenography of the '89 Batman, and I think that it takes away something conceptually. Accuracy. The overall shape is absolutely perfect. The white threadings have been meticulously reproduced, and each webbing is correctly positioned for an outstanding general accuracy. It just could have been a bit more worn out in relation to the specific movie scene from which I suppose it came from. Additionally, I believe the whip is not equally accurate as the mask. Overall design. Easy assembly, well thought, and very pleasing to the eye. Accessories. The bonus item is simple, but really nicely done. Wow factor. Always very subjective. Can surely increase if you pair it with its companions, whereas alone it's not the kind of thing that astounds you or leaves you totally breathless. Surely an impressive one though, and so worth consideration. Hyperrealism degree. Due to the paint flows and to the sculpture-related imperfections, including the most impactful one, their take on the thread-free holes, I feel it might not deserve the highest grade in this category. I assigned it an 8 out of 10. Character representation. Keeping in mind that this is a proper replica and it doesn't unfortunately include Michelle Pfeiffer's countenance, I feel it represents exceptionally the character. The only thing that prevents me from giving it the maximum rating for this category is the slight anachronism of the base. Attachment to the character. I already talked about this point at the beginning. I feel there's no need to stress it out more. As numbers testify, I'm overall happy with it. I think it definitely turned out pretty good. Might not be a centerpiece, but it's a fascinating high-quality proper replica, and to me it's eventually worth its cost. Well done, Pure Arts. Thank you for this awesome piece. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, stay tuned for the other two reviews of the Batman cowl and the penguin mask. Please, also don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you already didn't. Thanks again, ciao a tutti e alla prossima!